Hello, my name is Arnaud Plagnol, and I am at Paris, France. My current academic position is Professor of Psychology at University Paris 8, Vincennes, Saint-Denis, a town near Paris, where we have a big cathedral that is where kings of France are buried since many centuries. And I have an old passion for interdisciplinary research. So you can see my academic training. Some things are old, but it is a glimpse about my interest in many fields, and particularly mathematical logic and foundation of computer science. I have also a medical degree, and I'm working as a psychiatrist in some fields. And I have a great interest in cognitive science and philosophy. And I have done a thesis in philosophy of logic and semantics with a thesis about the foundation and grounding of representation. So my research areas, it is around the representation theory, and more specifically, how can we build universe of representation? It means how can we build universe from elementary fragment of presence to arrive at complex universe of possible worlds. Some things like mental universe and metaverse and other universe. And the other direction that is linked to the president is navigation in possible worlds, what can be called modal navigation. I've done a lot of work about modal navigation in universe of possible worlds. So modal navigation is, for example, about spatial travel, mental time travel, fictional navigation, epistemic navigation, like mind reading of other people's. But it is also about high-level navigation, for example, aesthetic travel, reasoning, but also spiritual life, from exploration of inner world to transcendental world. And we speak again about this, about paradise. Such a navigation can account for, take an current example, how to account for the navigation in the multiverse of madness, like in the famous Doctor Strange movie. My nickname is Doctor Strange for my daughter. So what about logics for me? Logics, in a traditional meaning, the core fields of logic are theory of inference and reasoning. But I defend a more general view. Logic as the abstract theory of representation. Why defend such a view? Think to an inference. An inference is a special case of representation. We can say that premise represents the conclusion by laws of representation. Logical laws are laws of representation. And I have written a paper about this in the book coordinated by Jean Bezio and others recently published. More generally, in any law, natural or conventional, antecedents have representation of the consequence. Some entities can present some entities. So logics can be seen also as the general theory of representational system, how to access to represented universe that extend beyond an immediate presence. And we can study of properties in this general meaning of an adequate representational system, completeness, faithfulness, coherence. And so in a more specific meaning, a more deep meaning, I also see logics as a formal study of the structure. We can use the ancient word logos, or now web, the structures of universe. with the ontological questions, how some entities can presentify some other entities. And it starts from the problem of presence, how a representation can present a content. It seems trivial or impossible. It is a grounding problem. So I have done a lot of work about such a problem. And in my view, any representation is founded on a fragment of presence given in a window of presence with the mediation principle, an analogical principle. So it means that there are some fixed point of representation, and we can build a universe with some present fragments that are unified by symbolic structures. And I have done a lot of work about such framework. The core of my approach is to be able to construct complex universe. And we can now speak of the paradise problem. The Cathedral of Saint-Denis is the first manifestation of Gothic art in a deep way, and in the intention of Abbot Suger, who was the founder of Cathedral of Saint-Denis. The iconography has for meaning to elevate all souls to the spiritual realms, but only the most subtle clerics can access the deepest meaning. And so we have a logical problem. How such an ascension, means because paradise is always situated at the top, how such an extension of the universe, such an ascension, is logically possible. And a good way to put the problem has been put by the French novelist Huysmans in 19th century. He wrote a very important book about the Cathedral of Chartres, and he tried to explain that the Cathedral of Chartres can be a representation of the universe, and of the Christian universe, and of the good universe, and can be a representation of good, of the good, and of course of the paradise, but also of the fall. So you see the fall there with Adam and Eve. So paradise is always given in very tiny image, fragment of presence, and it means a representation of an high ideal through a very limited window of presence. And intuition is a modelized representation. So we have the problem: can we access to a complete, faithful, and coherent representation of paradise? It means a lot of psychological, existential, spiritual problems, but also logical problems. And it was at the heart of medieval logics. We need a theory of representation, a logical theory of representation, a theory of navigation in possible worlds, how to go to paradise with such an assumption. And we need a theory of power of intuition, how to access to extend the universe. So I will start in my talk by specifying some characteristics of paradise. There are some problem of limits. What are the limits or not of the paradise? Some characteristics are important. If we think that if there are some bodies in the paradise, we need to specify what we understand by the presence in paradise. Is it a whole presence, like in some theological dogma, we speak of parousia? There is a lot of question about the structure of the universe that can represent paradise. Is it unified or fragmented? If it is coherent and fragmented, we need some model tools. If there are many minds in paradise, we need also some model tools. We need to specify some degree of integration, and we need to specify if there is some dynamics or not in the paradise, with a deep theological question about reconciliation in the paradise or not. And so, after such specification, I will just present some elements of grounded theory of representation and allow some very simple proof of the existence of good, of the possible encounter with good, of the paradise. But existence is not presence. We have no intuitionist proofs of the paradise. Proof of existence doesn't mean the smallest step towards the paradise. Towards the paradise is a very, very long way. So we need logical tools to describe a mental universe of representation, to describe how we can do paths in such a universe, how we can do an assumption, and how and we need to describe some dangers of the travel. We have some good examples with the models of Dante's divine comedy. Divine comedy involves 90 songs, and it interacts with Dante's life. There are some very important meetings of Virgil and Beatrice, and everybody knows the dangers of hell in the divine comedy. And at the heart of the association of tones, there are some poetic and erotic intuitions. So meeting of Virgil and Beatrice, and it interacts with the own lives of Dante. And he has met Beatrix. He was 9 years old. So how it was possible for him to go through many steps to the summit of paradise. So I will focus on some logical roles of aesthetic and erotic intuition. So I will specify some elements of theory of harmonic intuitions with I will insist on the logic of difference. It means that at the heart of the possible reach of the paradise, in all examples that are discussed or proposed in poesy, in literature, in philosophy, we have always some examples of encounter with a couple of difference. And I will take the example of the paradox of the love encounter. It involves some Platonician reminiscence, and how is it possible with such a difference to extend to the mind can expand to reach to encounter with God, and what it involves about the infinite care of God, and what does it mean finally to fulfill a paradisiac intuition, and how is it possible to have some anchors in actual life. So it is my ambition for this communication in India. Thank you very much.